Good morning, and welcome to Rolling Hills Church of Christ. If you're visiting with us here this morning, we're certainly glad for your presence. If you're looking for a church home, I'm very confident this will be a nice place for you. We'll get started here this morning. Foggy out your all's way this morning? Yeah, it's very foggy, wasn't it? And seen more fog right here in front of the church building. I did all the way to church this morning. Man, it's foggy down there. But it's supposed to be a beautiful day, and sun's out, and just always feel better. I don't know whether it's cold or whatever it is. It's just always nice for the sun to be out. We'll get started this morning with some updates on our sick and our bereaved, and whatever else needs to come before our Sunday school group this morning. So I'll open the floor up to you. Miss Betty Congleton is back in the hospital. I seen that on an email last night with fluid on her lungs. And so let's keep her in her prayers. The Coopers are here to update us on Al and Norma Joe. I did text Nancy Cooper last night, and she said that her mom was doing better and that her dad was in the hospital, and everybody knows he has this renal failure right now. So, sounds pretty serious, the renal failure does, but let's keep them in our prayers also. Who else? What else? Any updates on our sick or that we know of? Dan? Uh-huh.
And he likes his cards. You know, if you want to send him a card, they're taping them on the wall, I think Nancy is. So,
Okay.
cards, send cards.
Dan said that cards, that Alan Willie really like cards, and they're taping them on the hospital wall. And I'm not sure how much longer he's got to stay, but it's going to be a while, right? Yeah, that's what the last word I had was. So if you can send cards, how do you send cards to the hospital, though? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, you got to have a address to the hospital, but I mean, you got to know what room number they're in, I guess. I don't know. I've never done that before. But what now? Oh, okay.
And Norma Joe had brought some yesterday.
Okay. So probably the best plan is send them to the house, and they'll take them to him. They do go see him, right, Dan? All right, very good. What else? Anything? Anybody else? Dan, you got something funny to say? I can tell with that smirk on your face.
Watching a football game with him last night. Of course, he's very quiet.
Yeah.
Because of his congestion and how he's feeling. But every once in a while, he'd rear up and say, "What did you do that for?"
All right. So he still got some spunk going on then, right?
Still got some.
Yeah, that's right. That is right. All right. Anybody else? How's Miss Wheels doing? Improving? Getting a little stronger? Okay. Okay. All right. You still been a good nurse? All right. Very good. All right. Anything? Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. Travis, would you say our opening prayer this morning, please?
Family and extended family, various illnesses, pray that you will be with them
Amen. Thank you. All right. We've been studying in Joshua. This is my last Sunday, and for my time with you for the last 3 months. And Brother Jerry, I believe you said, what's his title for?
Minor prophets.
The Minor Prophets. Okay. Brother Jerry Carmichael will be starting on the Minor Prophets, and starting next Sunday. So we're going to have one more really good lesson here on Joshua. It's anytime you seem to get in the Old Testament, you can really study a long time, and it's hard for me to stay on course, okay? You know, because so much in Joshua has already, the things have been done before Joshua, and we could talk about that forever, but we're not. We're going to talk about Joshua today. We're going to talk about crossing the Jordan and taking Jericho. And I'll have to hurry if I get all that done in one lesson here. So we're going to start, though. Last Sunday, I told you we was bellied up right against the east side of the Jordan River, okay? And today is an exciting lesson, really, because this is, for 40 years, what's been happening to the Israelites? What have they been doing? Been wandering around the desert. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a doer kind of feller, okay? You know, and I just can't imagine what that was like for 40 years. Wandering in the desert. Now, you know, we know God fed them the manna, you know, and took care of them. We know all that, right? But I just can't imagine what that was like. I can't. I just can't even fathom that. But that's what they did, and there was, how many, 500 or 600 of these folks wandering around for 40 years? Was that what we said? How many we think was there? Just guess. How many? Yeah, we think there was at least 2 million. You know, and one of the authors that I study, he thinks it's closer to 4.5 to 5 million. So we're going to stay way down on the conservative side, not to overexploit what the amount of people was there. But you know, you think about that, just the sheer number of people. What was it, Cindy? Last week you said there was 28,000. Is that what you said? In Montgomery County. Remember, you looked it up for me. 28,000. 28,000 people. And today there'll be close to 300 here in this auditorium. And look around what 300 people looks like. Now you get thinking about 2 to 5 million. Oh, that just becomes a tremendous number, right? That was going on here, you know, and that he was leading. So this large number, we can't let that get by. So what kind of leadership, what kind of leading that it took in order to lead this group? So they had been wandering around for 40 years, and they had been on the east side of the Jordan, okay? And I did get my maps up here, and I never could tell for sure how big they were, but we'll talk about the maps here in just a few minutes, okay? So we're going to start back in Joshua 1, and man, I sound like I'm loud again today. Are you all, am I too loud back there? No? Okay. All right. We'll start back in Joshua 1, and we're going to start, and we're going to read starting in verse 1. Joshua 1, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, after the death of Moses, and we've been through this lesson already, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised to Moses. That's where we're at today. We're there. And we're going to flip over to chapter 3. And it's an exciting time, right? I mean, these folks has been wandering around for 40 years. And like I said, I can't fathom that, okay? I just don't know what that would have been like just to be a wanderer, okay? I don't know what that's like. And but that's what happened, and that's where we are. Now, let's talk about the things that we know. We already know the land is fruit and honey, right? It's bountiful. The harvest is bountiful. There is good things over on the west side of the Jordan River, right? There is. We already know that. They already know this. They haven't forgotten this. And so we know, they know that there is a better place on the other side, and they also know it's promised land. Also, the people knows that there is dangerous people on the other side, right? They already know that. They know that too. You know that there's armies, there's military, there's big walls. I mean, and thirdly, they got to cross the Jordan. Now, in my studies, I couldn't find where the Jordan River is, where they cross. I don't know how wide that was. The Jordan River, I got some facts on the Jordan River here. The Jordan River is 156 miles long. It varies in width. It floods during the time of harvest. It's what it's called, and it flows north to south all the way through the Sea of Galilee. So that's what the Jordan River is. But this thing is out of its banks during this time. And I'm getting ahead of my story, so we better start reading here. Joshua chapter 3, okay? It says, in verse 1, it says, early in the morning, Joshua and all of the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over for 3 days. After the 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. It says, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the priests who are Levites carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. And then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. All right. So he is gearing them up, isn't he? In 3 days, he says. He's giving them 3 days to get ready. And he's gearing the troops up. He's telling them what to do. Here's what we're going to do. Let's talk just a little bit about the Ark of the Covenant. What is that? Tell me just something you know about it. Inside of it, right?
Manna inside of it.
Right. What? Aaron's rod is inside of this box. Is the box, is it a wooden box? What's it covered in? What? Gold, yes, it's covered in gold. That's exactly right. And what's been the significance of this Ark of the Covenant? The tabernacle, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. So this is a pretty important thing to these Israelites, okay? The Ark of the Covenant is. And, you know, let's go back and step back and look at the logistics here. And he's telling them, he said, this is going to be how this happens, okay? And this is going to be your symbol. This will be the leader of what's going to happen when we cross the Jordan River here. All right. And he says we're going to keep about, whose Bible says cubit? C-U-B-I-T. What's it say? How many cubits? Yeah, which equals about 1,000 yards. Yes, that's right. So we're going to keep some distance back from it, right? So logistically, it was important, right? This many people following one object. And another thing is when he says you need to consecrate yourself, and in another version, the word is different. Sanctify was the other word. When you sanctify, what's it mean to be sanctified? Free from what? Sin. So God is telling Joshua to have the people, he wants a holy group of people ready to make a move, right? He wants them to be sanctified. He wants them to consecrate themselves from sin. All right. Verse 6 says, Joshua said to the priest, take up the Ark of the Covenant. We've talked about that. Pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. That's pretty important, isn't it? we're going to exalt this situation, 40 years of this, right? And now I'm with you just like I promised to be with Moses and was always with Moses. And he's telling Joshua this. How do you think Joshua's feeling right now? A bit nervous? I would think so. I mean, he's asking, all these people to make this move to the Jordan River and its out of its banks and tremendous faith here. Think so? When all these people try to make this move through the Jordan River, I mean, how many of them's going to drown? How many? None drowns, right? But if you're one of those 2 million people, especially if you're a lady and you're packing your child, Aaron, you want to swim the Jordan River this morning? Probably not, right? Took a lot of faith, wouldn't it? See what I'm saying? The human factor here? It takes a lot of faith to do this stuff, right? It's easy for us to just run right by it. Oh yeah, Jesus told them to through Joshua. God did, so that's what we're going to do, right? Yeah, it takes a lot of faith here on this people's part to get in that line and start down into that Jordan River. Aaron, I'm not picking on you this morning, but just think about that just for a second. If you're packing your little fella in your arms, I mean, how hard that would be, right? You might go yourself, but it'd be hard to take that little fella with you, wouldn't it? It would, wouldn't it? Absolutely. So these people had great faith, didn't they? And they have to have in order to make this move. In order to start following that Ark of the Covenant into the Jordan River. In verse 9, in verse 8 it says, "Tell the priest who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go stand in the river." Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Havites, Perizzites, Gershites, Amorites, and the Jebusites." That's a lot of zites and rights, isn't it? That's a whole bunch of them anyways. So anyways, verse 11 says, "See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you." It says, "Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel." Here we go. Here's our 12 tribes here. One from each tribe. "And as soon as the priests carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap." Now, we will stop there. We've seen this before, right? When did this happen? When was it? Yeah, when Moses led them out of Egypt, right? And what was it? What sea was it? Yeah, the Red Sea. And we've seen this before, that the water was parted, and of course they was able to cross. And as we know, Pharaoh's army went out into it, and the water came back down, and they drowned. So once again, this is what's going to happen, right? We are going to part the Jordan River here. Let me see here. I get ahead of my notes. All right. Yeah, we'll go on. It says, "Now the Jordan is at flood stage." We've already talked about that. It's at harvest, right? And that is true. Even today, when they have flooding over there, it's usually close to their harvest time. Okay. And it says, "As soon as the priests..." So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest, what we just said. Yet, as soon as the priests who carried the Ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zidon, while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah, or the Salt Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priest who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on the ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all of Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. All right, First, chapter 3 is an overview, okay? I mean, it's like the 1,000-foot view of what happened. We're going to skip chapter 4 because it goes back into way more detail of what happened in chapter 3. It's not like a sequel to it. It just goes back and talks about in more detail. But, you know, so we've crossed, right? Chapter 3 tells us, you know, that the Ark of the Covenant, they started out in there. The seas, I mean, the water quit flowing. It was parted, and they walked out into the middle of that. Jamie? No? I don't have my pointy thing in here. Give me a new map. Yeah, that's it. And point to the Jordan River. Oh, you can't do that, can you? The Jordan River actually is right in the middle here. See the blue line going right up the middle? There we go. Somebody's got a pointer. And so that is the Jordan River there. And, of course, they was on the east side. Take the pointer. There you go. They was on the east side is where they was at. And that's where they crossed the Jordan River. And how many tribes do we already have that settled on the east side? How many? 2.5. Isn't that funny? I mean, I like that half. You know, I'm not sure what happens to the other half, but as I'm sure as I study on, I'll find out. But they did. They crossed the Jordan right in the middle there, basically, of where we're at. And as I stand, like you, on this side, of course, the east is over here, the west is over here, and then we have a north, and then we have south going down. So that's the same map as anybody's map. But anyways, that is the Jordan River there where he's got the pointer running up and down. All right. So they have crossed the Jordan River. Like I say, verse 4, we probably need to say a little bit about the stones. And, you know, they did, Joshua did tell them to go pick up each leader of the 12 tribes. They did tell them in chapter 4 to go get a stone. And they took it to the village or the town where they was going to set up camp. And they was always to remember. And the reason for the stones was they always wanted, Joshua always wanted them to remember, even their children would know what a significance this was, okay? All right. Now, we're gonna move on from there and go to chapter 6. One of my favorite stories in the Bible, right? When all small children, this is one of the first stories that probably most of us heard, learned, right? Yeah. It's still a great story, though, isn't it? It just shows tremendous faith. I was really disappointed, and, you know, the first time I read it, that when I got old enough to read it, because I wanted it to be more, what's the word, more maverick. You know, I wanted to have some more cowboy stuff in it, if you will. You know, I mean, some more military stuff, you know. And the way that this comes about, what do we know about Jericho? What do we know about the city? Walled up, right? Great security. What else do we know about Jericho? Do we think it had a large populace? Probably not. We don't know that for sure. But strategically, it was more of a military base. It was more protecting the east and the west there, and the north and south road. As you look on the map, it was probably used for more of a military thing. Now, how many people was there? Not sure, right? What else do we know about Jericho? Yeah, it was shut up, completely up. I mean, can you imagine that? You know, they shut the stone gates. I'm assuming they were stone like the walls, and you couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. Now, and we're going to read here in a minute, but how do you think they felt when they got there, when they saw all that? What would have been our reaction, the human factor? Oh man, you'd be thinking, oh man, how are we going to do this, right? How are we ever going to get over these walls? How are we ever going to get this done? You know, and of course, my way of thinking would have been is that God, you know, He's going to blast out of the sky a big shot of lightning and blow the doors off this thing, and we're going to rush in and overtake them, right? Just a little commandeering kind of, you know, that's that thing that I have going on. How do we know that turned out for them?
God melted the hearts of the people of Jericho.
God melted the hearts of the people of Jericho. That's right. So let's read here, okay? We're in chapter 6. And let me catch up with my notes here. Right, right. Yes. Yes. Right. And he done exactly what God told him, didn't he? Joshua's a tremendous example for all of us, isn't he? He really is. I mean, he showed great faith, and I mean, he obeyed, and he done exactly as God instructed him to. All right, Joshua chapter 6. It says, now Jericho was tightly shut up, just what we'd already talked about, because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, let's stop right there. Now, interesting, we're going to stop and go back to chapter 5 here, and we're going to read verse 13. I think this is important. It says, chapter 5, verse 13. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Now, think about that just a little bit. The man standing there holding a sword. So Joshua went up to him and asked, he says, are you for us? Are you our enemy? And neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, he said, what message does my Lord have for his servants? Now he's leading millions of people, right? And he comes upon a man, he has no idea who it is, but he truly has that much faith, doesn't he? That he fell upon his face. And he says, what message does the Lord send to me? The commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals, for the place where they are standing is holy. Now, I worked on that, trying to exactly figure out what that meant. But as far as I know, that is exactly what it means. At that particular place, at that particular moment, it was holy. Does anybody have a comment on that they would like to share? I don't think I turned my phone on. What, the burning bush? Yes, that is correct. Yes, sir, it is. But it was holy. I mean, where he was standing at that moment, told him to take his sandals off, and he did. Say that again, I'm sorry.
Holy because this angel or this messenger from God, the captain of the Lord's army, God's army of angelic beings, is there. It's from God. That's why it's holy for Joshua.
Because he's there, right? Yeah. His presence is there. That's exactly right. So he says that you're standing on holy ground. And now, let's go back to chapter 6, and this is what this man with the sword, who was the Lord's messenger. He says, and the Lord said to Joshua, I'm in chapter 6, verse 2. It says, and the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. Now, when did that happen? Oh, am I on? Am I on? No. When did that happen? When did this happen? Am I off or on? I can't tell. Can you hear me now? What about now? Oh, wow. Have to hook that on my glasses, Mike. All right. So anyways, so when did this happen? When did he deliver Jericho and the king to Joshua and the Israelites? That's what it says, right? It says, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and its fighting men. When did this happen? Do what? Yeah. Yeah, now, if I'm Joshua, I'm sitting there thinking, really? We've crossed the Jordan. That's real good, right? But we haven't got nothing yet. We're still standing outside these walls, and we can't get in. So I found that to be a tremendous interesting verse that God, I'm assuming that he was giving him that much confidence, that, hey, this is already a done deal. Now I'm going to tell you what you're going to do to make this happen. Yes, that is right.
I mean, if you tell somebody that your descendants will heir in this amount, and even though you pass, your descendants will still heir. So God started it back with Abraham when he promised Abraham that his descendants would be as many as the stars and the sand of the sea, and that God is always true on everything he does. So it started way back here. So Joshua is a player in the whole scheme. It was a scheme that started back with the promise to Abraham and is carried through all these hundreds of years, that it is now culminating. Jericho is theirs, and so is everything else, as long as they keep his commandments, because they are the descendants of Abraham.
Right. Okay. I believe we're back on, guys. Right? Okay. All right. So, maybe I'm too on. All right. What about in the back there? Everybody okay here? All right. So, but that is right. I mean, it's been promised, right? But I just found that to be interesting, I mean, and like I said, I can only assume that the Lord is giving him that much confidence. Hey, this is done. This is done. And now all you got to do, here's the recipe, or here's your orders. How are you going to get this done? Let's read on. Verse 3, chapter 6 says, "March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the people will go up, every man straight in." Let's stop there. Not exactly your typical warrior remedy, right? In order to take a city, would you agree? That's not how it's usually done. We're going to march around the city, we're going to blow horns, and we'll carry the ark, and so it sounds like a terrible plan, doesn't it? To make the walls fall down, right? But why is it such a great plan? Whose plan is it? It's God's plan. Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, once again, I mean, these folks have shown tremendous faith again, don't they? That this is going to happen. Agreed? We agree? You got to show faith that this is going to happen. And if I think about those folks sitting, that was in up on the wall, and day one, you look around and they're going around your city, and you're like, what are they doing? Where's their army at, right? Where is how are they going to ram a hole in the side of our walls, right? I mean, I can just imagine that. Can you? I mean, them looking out, going, I don't think that's going to happen, boys. It's all good. Break out the steak, and the baked potatoes, because this isn't going to happen. They're not going to do anything to us walking around blowing horns and carrying their little ark around with them, right? I mean, I can just see that and feel that. And but of course, we're going to find out what happens here right now. So Joshua called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark." Right. So he's got his instructions. He's now he is their leader, and he's also their military leader. And so he said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." So Joshua called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it." And he ordered the people, "Advance, march around the city with the armed guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord." When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the people, "Do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices. Do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. And then shout," he says. So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the people returned to camp and spent the night there. So, okay, so here's what's happened. You know, we've got our message, right? This is what God wants us to do, and now I'm ordering you to do this. And that's what they've done. As we stop here, they have done exactly what they have been ordered to do. Not exactly the most military style, would you agree, what we're doing here? And that's where we're at. And then to think, you know, we're going to shout and good things is going to happen. But hang on, let's read some more of our story, okay? In verse 12, it says, Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord, blowing the trumpets, just like the day before, right? So they're still obeying what God has told them to do. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. Verse 15 says, on the 7th day, they got up at daybreak. And this was the day that, you know, the good things was going to happen, right? This was what the promise was. This is what the instructions was. So on the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner. Except that on that day, the 7th time they've done this in a row, they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the people, shout. He's yelling to them, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. But keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble to it. All the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted. And at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So every man charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, man, woman, and child, old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Now, let's stop there for a minute. 7th day, what did they do? They got up and done the same thing they done for the first 6, right? Same thing. They marched around, except they marched around how many times this time? 7. That's exactly right. And what happened? What happened when they did this? When Joshua commanded them all to shout, what happened? Yeah, the walls fell, didn't they? Just exactly how God had told them to. Now, and they charged in, and what did they do with all the people and all the animals there? What happened to them? Yeah, killed everything, didn't it? As you go back and read and study, these people had been good people up to a certain point in history, okay? But they had become pretty bad characters as far as, you know, one of the questions that was asked, you know, why did the Lord kill all the people? And he did, right? That's what it said. That he killed all the people, all the donkeys. I mean, you know, my question is to you, why did the animals die? What was the significance here? Remember the time that we're in, right? So what is the significance? The people had to die, they did. But so did all the animals.
Well, they were sacrificed to foreign gods, to gods that were not gods. And if you purge, you have to get rid of the stuff that was used in sacrifice and rituals to other gods. There was only one God, and he demanded all that to be taken care of. And he goes on and tells them that if you mingle or intermarry with these people, their gods will, their beliefs will encroach upon you. So it follows how God looked upon those people that need to be moved away out of the Israelites.
So it's very symbolic, wasn't it? I mean, the animals really had done nothing wrong, right? But it was symbolic to what God was trying to accomplish here. You know, I mean, we're going to wipe them all out, right? It's the whole thing. So it don't even exist anymore. Now, who did we save? Remember? From last week, we're going to save one person and her family. Who was that? Rahab. Yeah. And they did. Let's read on here. We're running out of time. Okay. In verse 22, it says, Joshua said to the two men who had spied out the land, go into the prostitute's house and bring her out and all who belong to her, in accordance with your oath to her. So, what was the oath? Remember last week? What was the oath to Rahab and her family?
Anybody at her house that was kin to that was in her house
would be spared, wouldn't it? Yeah. And was she allowed to come outside and watch this? No, they gave specific instructions. Said, if you come out of that house, your blood's on you. Remember last week? So Rahab done what she was asked and what she was told. And, you know, if you try to think back to that, I mean, it'd be probably a relatively gruesome scene. Would you think so? What do you think? I mean, I think it would be terribly gruesome, to be honest with you. All this killing of men, women, and children and animals, I wouldn't have wanted to see it. And I don't think most of us would have. Okay, let's read on here. So they got Rahab and her family out and brought them out to the camp of Israel, it says. Verse 24, it says, then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. Now, let's stop right there just for a second. Why? Why did we put the silver and the gold and the valuables into the Lord's treasury?
The Lord had commanded
It had been commanded, that's right, no doubt. But why? Why did they want the silver and the gold? Yeah, at some point, when this is over, when this battle is over, they are going to need money, right? And they are going to need, these things for the cause of the Lord's kingdom in order to survive. So, I mean, that's why that they did that, okay? All right, it says, but... Right, absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, they would have never got inside the walls of Jericho without God, right? I mean, without Him, crashing the walls around it. So there's no doubt that couldn't have happened.
The supreme commander was God. And in war, the commanders that is in charge are the ones that says you can take spoils or you're to not take spoils. You're to burn and ravage or not to. But the Lord was the supreme commander. Therefore, the spoils of that war belong solely to Him as He commanded.
Right.
And it wasn't whether you wanted to or what you would like to have of it. It was what He had instructed. By faith, they had done all they'd done. And by faith, they would continue on. And you have to look at it from different perspectives.
It did take a lot of faith, didn't it? absolutely do what they done already. We're just about done here. It says, so we spared Rahab and her family that hid the spies, and she lives among the Israelites to this day, my Bible says in verse 25. At 26 it says, at that time Joshua pronounced this solemn oath. Thought this was kind of eerie. And he says, cursed before the Lord is the man who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. It will be at the cost of his firstborn son, and he will he lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest, he will set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. So, tremendous success, right? Would you say? The Bible doesn't say a single person was killed here. I don't know that, okay? But it doesn't say that there was a single person killed in this battle at Jericho that was of the Israelites. We got the silver, we got the gold, we killed the people, we killed the animals, we have wiped Jericho out, and Joshua lays down and says, don't ever build this back again. Don't ever do it again. So it has become basically a ghost town. Now, we're going to find out in chapter 7. We won't find out today about Achan. Achan was the bad egg in the group of all these people. And we're going to find out that their next battle wasn't near as successful. Hey, guys, flip my switch here on my maps here. Let's talk about my maps just a little bit more. That's what it looked like. This is what the 12 tribes looked like after they took the land. And as you can see, and today, this map right here, that's what it looks like today, and as you can see there, where it's boxed in there, and like I said, the funny thing is, this was the land of milk and honey, and even today they can't even sustain themselves agriculturally to even feed their own people, because it's such an arid desert region. But certainly it was during that time. I do thank you. I have been blessed to have been here the last 3 months, and I appreciate your attendance. Thank you.